let's get straight into the 5 must-read Black authors that you need to get into this year if you haven't already. Now you can see this stack is quite healthy. So this list will have YA, it will have fantasy, romance, paranormal romance, spicy romance, horror, thrillers, a mix of everything, because I'm a firm believer that variety is the spice of life. The way that I will describe this writer, she knows how to write love letters to Black women that make us feel seen, but also acknowledge some of the shared trauma or experience that we have living within the world. I was gonna say within this country, but girl, the world. And that is Kennedy Ryan. She once was coined, and I'm not gonna get it exactly right, but I'm gonna get as close as I can. She was basically saying her form of revolution is choosing to show Black characters being loved gently. So if you are a lover of contemporary romance, and if you don't know what that means, it means that it is based in a time that is now, and there's not any fictional elements besides the characters. I would highly recommend getting into the Skyland series. This is the only book that I've read by Kennedy Ryan, but when I tell you she is loved within the romance world, there is a reason for it. When I read Before I Let Go, something just turned on in my head. Not only was it a beautiful depiction of a second chance romance and a beautiful woman being loved properly, and also being loved after some really traumatic things happen back to back in her life. What I really loved about this series is the depiction of self-love and therapy that is shown, especially therapy as it relates to Black women and Black men, and how we go about it a little bit differently. As a person that I've always struggled with my own, bouts of depression and anxiety, I thought that this was a beautiful tale about being loved exactly as you are. I highly recommend this. Definitely check the trigger warnings, but Kennedy Ryan's writing is so approachable. That is the word that I want to use, even though it is beautiful and there are parts that you want to underline and quote. Something about the way that she writes makes you know that she knows you and you know her, and it's everything, girl. It is everything, okay? The main character in this is one of my favorite main characters that I've ever stumbled upon. This Could Be Us came out. This is my honorable mention. I would highly recommend reading these series back to back. You don't have to read them in order, but you can. I've had this book since last year, but for some reason, I just was not in a romantic mood. So I will be coming back to this because the 3rd installment of the Skyland series is coming out. Can't get enough. And essentially these follow a trio of best friends in their lives as it relates to love, their personal growth, and where they are in their lives. So highly recommend, if you're a contemporary romance girly and you have not heard of Kennedy Ryan, today is the day that you lock in, okay? Don't ask me, ask Goodreads. Don't ask me, ask Goodreads. Now, staying within the romance category, I have to talk about, when I say my favorite, like my favorite, girl, this is for the unhinged girlies that love spice, love fantasy, love paranormal kind of adventures, but specifically want to see, once again, Black women being loved gently for exactly who they are. They don't have to speak differently. They don't have to act differently. They don't have to tell anybody what they're bringing to the table, girl. No, it's not that kind of book. But when I say paranormal, I mean they have mates. Like, if you know what a fated mate is, yeah, girl, it's one of those. Kimberly Lemming's That Time I Got Drunk series. The first is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. First of all, for high fantasy girlies, and when I say high fantasy, I mean you enjoy Children of Blood and Bone, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson. You like high fantasy, okay? This is the one for you. But what I love about it is spicy, it's filthy, it is disgusting, girl. There's gonna be a couple of times where you girl, I'll be reading this on my Kindle and I'll be like, gee, whoa, let me highlight that. Let me bookmark that and come back. Seriously, there are some spicy parts, but when I tell you, just as spicy and rough as the spicy parts can get, the love is so gentle and comforting, and that is what I absolutely love. You are transported into a feudal era where you follow kind of this family, because there are 3 installments. I've read all 3. I've listened to the audiobooks. Honey, when I tell you I love Kimberly Lemming, I love Kimberly Lemming. I probably read the most books. Well, that might not be true, but I've read 4 of her books so far, and I'm telling you right now, her writing it's like she's talking to you. What I love so much about her writing is that it's completely and totally conversational. It is super easy to digest, and honey, if you got that freaking you, okay, this is the one. I highly recommend this to the girlies that love Twilight growing up, wanted a werewolf boyfriend, wanted a vampire boyfriend, love anime, wanted Inuyasha to be, if you wanted Inuyasha to be your boyfriend, this is what Inuyasha and Kagome, this is why they couldn't communicate all them seasons, because really they wanted to do this, okay? Get into it, okay? Clock it. Thank you. Kimberly Lemming is that girl, so much so that she allowed me to read an arc that is coming out in February, which I will be talking about. It is so good, y'all. But once again, filthy. Did you hear me? I said it was filthy. Don't try to act like I didn't tell you it was filthy. When I say if the spice is out of 3, it's 4. Yeah, girl. Filthy, but wonderful. You're going to fall in love with these characters. You're going to fall in love with this world. You are going to fall in love with the adventures and never want to stop reading about them, okay? I'm telling you right now, if you get into this and you like it, you're going to be addicted. So, I'm just saying. Now, I'm giving an honorable mention, even though I want this author to be considered on this list. I did want to keep it to 5. I do want to give an alternative if you also love paranormal romance, but you, like me, are a little slower to the get. You like spice, but you kind of want to know who he is before y'all get spicy. I would highly recommend these cozy paranormal romances, okay? These are by Celestine Martin. She is an amazing indie author. Listen, okay? Witchful Thinking is the first. Kiss and Spell, my favorite. And Deja Brew, also my favorite. Listen, okay? These 3 are that girl. They're that girl. They're paranormal, they're spicy, and I would like to say they're like a very cutesy, because don't be fooled, Before I Let Go is spicy too, okay? That's her husband. I would say if I put them in order, I would say Before I Let Go and these series are neck and neck. They're spicy, but I would give them like a 1 or a 2. This is this is a 3 or 4, okay? This is like 1 or 2. You know what I mean? And there's 3 of them. They're super cozy. They are very good if you are just looking for like a no stakes read. Like, you don't want to be stressed. You don't want to be stressed out thinking all this extra stuff. First one, falls in love with a siren, aka a merman. Yeah, girl. Yeah, lock in. Number 2, falls in love with a fairy prince. Clock it. Yeah, girl. And number 3, falls in love with a magician. And honey, sometimes they slip in and out of time. Just letting you know. But I'm letting you know right now. That is the end of the romance category. As you can see, I am a big paranormal and romance girly. So if you have any more contemporary romance authors that you think need to be included on this list, make sure you drop them down below. And also, don't just drop the author. Give me your recommended read of what's a good first read, okay? My good first read right now in romance, if you're starting off with Kennedy Ryan, Before I Let Go is a really good way to start. With Kimberly Lemming, I would definitely recommend the very first That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. And if you're starting off with Celestine Martin, I would highly recommend, honestly, you don't have to read them in order. I actually read Kiss and Spell first, but I would definitely say start with Ritual Thinking, because it is a really good introduction to just a cute, it's literally small town fairy tale romance. How could you go wrong? How could you go wrong? And that's what I thought. Now, we're going to get into YA, but specifically in YA, I put the fantasy and thriller because that's my preference. Whenever I'm reading fantasy and thriller, I prefer for it to be YA. That's just my personal picks. You know, that's just me. But we will slip over to one of my favorite authors, okay? I'm obsessed with this lady. It's actually a problem, so much so that she's had to befriend me on multiple social platforms because I talk about her so much. I'm not ashamed. Kalynn Bayron, okay? And if I had to recommend a series to start with, it would be This Poison Heart, which is the first, and This Wicked Fate. Now, when it comes to fantasy, I am a big believer that I do not need it to be 700 pages and boring. That's not where I am. I enjoy watching high fantasy, don't really love reading it. You know what I mean? I don't want to be so immersed in a world that I'm like, girl, where are we? What are we doing? And who is that? You know? So, why I love Kalynn Bayron so much, once again, she mostly writes YA. She also writes middle grade. But this Poison Heart series is such an interesting contemporary fantasy. It specifically follows Briseis. Shout out to Greek mythology. And if you are a lover of Percy Jackson and you love retellings of fairy tales as well as Greek mythology, I would highly recommend Kalynn Bayron. This particular novel follows Briseis as she finds out the origin of her plant manipulation powers. She was adopted by her mothers and lives in Brooklyn, but finds out that she inherits a large estate in the more rural side of New York, and she goes there and learns more about her powers as well as her birth family. But honey, when I tell you the can of worms opens and they're everywhere, girl. This is such a great novel. It's also a really, really good introspection on like self-sabotage and how it affects your personal growth. I love Briseis's growth throughout this, and when I tell you this book right here, the follow-up, This Wicked Fate, you're just gonna be literally just boohooing, crying. It is so good, y'all. It is so good. I would highly, highly, highly recommend this series to start off with Kalynn Bayron because that's how I started off. I would also recommend Cinderella is Dead, which is a Cinderella retelling, also YA. Very amazing. So this one is kind of Greek mythology retelling, while Cinderella is Dead is a fairy tale retelling of the story of Cinderella, but 200 years after her untimely death. Honorable mention is also Sleep Like Death, her most recent YA novel that came out. It is a retelling of Snow White. It is very interesting. I have some really pretty special editions of this that I would highly recommend. But I'm telling you right now, if you love fantasy and you want to get back into the world of fantasy, you want to just start reading again, these are the books. And the great thing about to me, the great thing about YA fantasy is that it's easy to get into. They're usually not 700 million pages. And you feel nostalgic, especially if you're in your 20s and 30s like I am. It's really nostalgic to look back on the time when you were 15 or 16 and, you know, life was just lifing, girl. I mean, life is still lifing, but life was lifing in a way that you're just like, oh, girl, I remember that, you know? So, also, clock that. Yeah, you saw it. You saw it, and if you didn't, cute. Keep it cute. Now, as we continue down this list, I want to also remind you that all of these books are available down in the description box. If you're interested in any of them, make sure to check them out. I do earn a small commission from them, but it is at no additional cost to you. Just support one of your new favorite creators, I hope. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Okay. Now, I know that we are really hitting close to that 5 authors, but remember one of them was an alternative author, so depending on how much spice you like, I'm gonna count those as 1. Yeah. We have to talk about Liselle Sambury. if you like horror, and when I say horror, I don't mean slashing, gory, well, in this particular one, yes. But I don't mean necessarily like Stephen King horror. I mean like horror like, oh my God, what is going on? Tender Beasts by Liselle Sambury, I would highly recommend. This is also YA. It is in a dark academia setting. It's basically like a Black excellence high school. And when I say it hits the fan, it hits the fan hard. I would highly recommend checking this out. It's basically the main character is trying to clear her brother's name. He's being accused of being a serial. And as she kind of dives deeper, she finds out some dark secrets about her family. And as she's trying to keep her family together, she's noticing the closer she gets to her youngest brother, the farther her family feels. This takes you on a twist and turn. I would definitely put this in YA horror thriller because it is thrilling. I believe I read this in like 2 days flat, which is only really a thing whenever I'm reading horror thriller because I just gotta know what's going on. I gotta know. But Liselle Sambury, another honorable mention, is another duology, Blood Like Magic and Blood Like Fate. If you like sci-fi and fantasy with Black witches and Caribbean culture, I would highly recommend this series. It is also YA. It is a wild ride. Now, they are a little bit on the longer side, but it is totally worth it once you get immersed in this life. The first one I ran through pretty quickly. The second one took me a little bit longer just because there was a lot of grief that was mixed into that. So it was a slower read, but it didn't make it any less satisfying at the end, okay? So, but if you like horror and thriller, Liselle Sambury is that girl. Now, let's talk about horror and thriller, but adult horror and thriller. Aaron E. Adams' Jackal. Now, what I find the most interesting about this particular novel is that it is in a predominantly white Midwestern town in Pennsylvania where the main character returns home for her friend's wedding and realizes that a string of murders has been happening dating back to like the 70s of young Black girls going into the forest and never being heard from again, honey. And when I tell you the reveal... The reveal at the end is what's going to keep you reading. But what I really love about this is that it talks specifically towards Black women that are afraid to be a stereotype or a certain type of Black women that don't know how to use their voice, that don't know how to advocate for themselves. And I think it is a very important novel to read because of the fantastical and horror elements. It gives a very visceral and real look into what it looks like to be a Black woman in a hostile environment. You know what I mean? Not just a hostile environment, but to grow up in a hostile environment and what that does to you and how you can unlearn that behavior by confronting those demons. Honey, this is a read and I would highly recommend this. This is adult fiction. It's not very long at all, but when I tell you, y'all, the reveal is so crazy. I don't even want to tell you nothing else, but the reveal is so crazy. So I would definitely recommend this. Make sure you check this out. Now, another honorable mention that I'm going to give for a YA thriller, not quite horror, but definitely thriller, is Joelle Wellington's Their Vicious Game. Joelle Wellington does an amazing job, again, at showing what it looks like to be a Black woman that is high achieving, that has high hopes of the world in a hostile environment, but knowing no matter what in that hostile environment, I'm gonna get what I said I'm gonna get. Okay, listen, Their Vicious Game is definitely a good introduction into Joelle Wellington's world of very interesting psychological thriller. It is so good. The way the book was introduced to me is it's like Hunger Games. What is it? The Bachelor meets Hunger Games. What? Girl, what kind of combination is that? Crazy. That's what it is. And it's a really good fast read. It is over 400 pages, so it is on the longer side, but it is totally worth it. She just came out with a new book called The Blonde Dies First, but I have not finished it yet, so I can't really recommend it, but I will give it an honorable mention. Overall, those are my must-read Black authors that I definitely think you should jump into, especially if you're interested in reading diversely or you want to start reading again. I have as many genres as you like. If you're interested in more recommendations, please leave them down in the comments. And don't forget, if you're interested in reading any of these books, they're all linked down in the description box. Yeah, and thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the tribe and hit that bell notification so you're notified every time I upload a new video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.